Rock and roll. Kia ora, everybody. What's up? It is Robett. Welcome to a Tuesday. Lockdown potentially is slowly making its way to a little bit of freedom for most Kiwis, and we're very lucky to have one of the bros, Mitchell Pham, world class New Zealander, absolute machine, my NZ Tech Mafia chair homie in crime, Mitchell Pham. How are you, mate?
Marina, I'm good, thank you.
Where are you? What's going on? Tell me a story. Mate, your hair's looking good. You just said that you hadn't had a haircut. Mate, you've put some gel in that shit. It's looking great, buddy. Where are you? What's going on?
I I had to. Otherwise I was gonna have an afro on the program. Where am I? I am at my home in Auckland. I have been here since the level 4 lockdown, and I'm looking forward to when we go back down to level 2 again. Just
You
working
can
from home like everyone else.
um man, there's a lot to get through. Tech empowerment, culture, community, a whole bunch. Maybe I'll start here. What have you learned about yourself in the last month? Been not probably traveling as much, not many as person meetings, not been on a million different boards that you're on. How have you navigated and managed your time over this last month?
I think the biggest thing for me is actually having a lot more time around my family, even though I'm still working, and there's always a lot of things going on, especially since pretty much every organization I'm connected to has been dealing with the COVID crisis in different ways. So it's been a very challenging time, very busy time for everyone. So my workload hasn't decreased at all. But certainly I save a lot of time from not having to commute, and it's much nicer having my family around all of the time. So it's kind of a blessing in disguise, or silver lining, if you will.
Yeah, it's been interesting because almost at this point, after four weeks, people are into routines. They've got into their new world. They go for the tea, they got the breakfast, they go for a walk, they take the dog, they got the thing. Like it's these what were they saying? Is it the 21 days of after they get into that realm? It's this the new normal of your new routine. Have you shifted any of your routines at all? What have you how have you changed your personal priorities with your time of keeping, I guess, mental sanity, personal sanity, keeping your body in the mix? Like what have you tweaked yourself over the last month?
I think the most significant thing for me personally is time for myself first thing in the morning, not having to get organized to go to the office or to go to meetings. And I use that time to um, do my exercise and just have some self time before the day catches on with me. I think that's been really, really good, especially for my mental health, I think, because being stuck at home every day and not being able to see all of the amazing people that I always enjoy working with, not being able to see them in person, not being able to go to my other office in Vietnam. Um, so yeah, so there's this sense of claustrophobia all of the time, and so just getting out on the road and going for a walk clears my head and kind of get me ready for the day. I think that's probably the most significant thing personally for me.
Now it's cool that you get the new balance off. You get your headspace into some better spots to think about things a little bit differently. New Zealand's had I think it's the first time in human history we've had a stop like this to a global economy for something like this, right? At this sort of scale. From a tech perspective, when you look at this, what was your original thoughts or fears before going into the world going into lockdown? Like, what were some initial thoughts of where you thought there might be some bottlenecks or big issues from maybe a tech side or even just from a business or commercial side? Where'd your headspace go to there?
Um, I think having survived the last uh, global recession, um, I think that was where my mind went to by default initially. Um, but the whole situation is so different this time around. The nature of the problem is different, but also the magnitude and the speed at which things topple have just been completely different. Um, So yeah, it was a scary moment there, thinking about, well, what might this look like. My initial thought was, well, maybe, being a tech business and being in the tech industry, we'll probably be okay working from home. Everybody will be, fine, adapting to that quickly and everything else. Um, and that was my initial thought, thinking, well, maybe, we can just quickly adapt ourselves that way. But of course, very, very quickly, um, I found that the tech industry is not immune, just like all other industries, to this whole crisis. And because tech is so pervasive, all of the tech businesses are there to serve other industries. And so as the lockdown and the economic impact hits across the economy, that's felt very, very quickly, very much immediately by the tech industry as well. So the tech businesses that I'm involved with are very much affected by the whole crisis, like every other business that we see out there, which again, kind of hit me a little bit hard, um, because I thought it was going to be a little bit easier for tech businesses. Um, but as it turns out, we just like everyone else.
Yeah, the it's interesting because a lot of hairdressers, physical service go to zero stuff. A lot of people have thought, oh, tech, just because you're in tech, you'll be sweet. And then simultaneously, I said, well,
Mm.
if you look at a lot of these different types of tech businesses, a big majority of them that either go to grow go into the SaaS model, subscription as a service, and a lot of overnight, most of them are done on a on a month by month basis. So there's been any type of little widgets and lots of, I mean, there are hundreds and thousands of these things that people are using all through their businesses. They all stopped as well, because basically if you're not in business for that too, that push has stopped. So cool, you might have $20 million in funding, you could have a couple hundred staff, you could have this, but literally when every single one of your clients, potentially if it's in the retail space or in the hospitality space or in the tourism space, have all gone to zero. So definitely, even though I think certain parts of tech are doing really well, certain parts are probably just as bad off as hairdressers, which is kind of a funky dynamic to think about.
Yes, you're right. And the impact hits different tech companies differently, depending on the markets or the industry that they serve, but also how each industry, each sector gets impacted by COVID as well, and that's really, really difficult to predict. Um, so there's a range of impacts from the negative impacts as well as the positive impact, being opportunities to accelerate or to pivot or to do something completely new. And I think over the first maybe 2 to 3 weeks of lockdown, um, most of the companies I'm aware of really had to focus on just dealing with the crisis, making sure that they physically adapt, and then also try to manage the whole economic effect as quickly as they could. I think in the past week, we're now starting to see companies looking at the current crisis now that they've grappled with the reality of what the crisis looks like for their business today and how they're going to kind of get by today. Um, so, entrepreneurs are now starting to look at the opportunity that this now presents to their business. And I see this a lot now. In the past week or so, conversations have started to shift to the opportunity landscape, trying to understand what the new world brings in terms of problems that can be solved by tech or tech businesses. So there's a lot of activities in scanning for opportunities, in accelerating whatever the companies were doing before, but now it becomes a more immediate opportunity, so they need to accelerate, or pivoting because there's now a new opportunity area that's better than before. Um, yeah, so it's really good to start seeing that happening.
What do you think you've got your fingers in lots of different tech pies in the New Zealand landscape that reaches out to the world. For some of the either founders or startups or even bigger businesses that you've seen in the last maybe 4 6 weeks, maybe one of the biggest pivots you've seen a company make and do on the fly out of survival or something? Like what's something that you've either helped with or seen it that makes sense that you wouldn't have thought more than 4 weeks ago?
That's still unfolding, so it's probably
Mm.
still early days to describe a lot of that, because that thinking process of pivoting is still is just now kicking in for a lot of businesses. Um, I think the most I've seen just in the last few weeks has been companies pivoting towards short to medium term solutions to assist with the COVID-19
Mm.
crisis. Um, and most of these, the problems that these companies are pivoting to solve tend to be around the wide range of challenges across the public healthcare system.
Mm.
So there's lots of acceleration and pivoting towards the COVID-19 crisis. What we're starting to see now is that space is now quite busy, almost
Mm.
even saturated. There's just so many pivoting
Mm.
towards it. That it then becomes very quickly becomes a red ocean. So now companies who haven't really jumped into that are now starting to look at the new landscape and look for the blue ocean where no one is doing anything. But then new opportunities, new problems emerging that need to be solved. Um, and all of this happens so quickly. Normally, you kind of look at this kind of process, which takes months or years even, but now it's happening within a matter of weeks. So it's both exciting and a little bit unknowing as well.
Yeah, what do you think? Like a big majority of businesses didn't have probably the cloud or the IT, tech, digital um, uh, foundations really set strong before this happened and had kind of rushed into this new world of Googling what Google Teams or Microsoft Teams or Google Hangouts or what Slack does or any of this stuff. So there's been a lot of, I guess, kind of forced fear into the unknown for many that don't understand tech. From those that you've seen around, how do you feel, strategically most of these businesses have done well, and then maybe where they could potentially have thought about things a little bit differently if they were to go through it again from what you've seen?
I have a divided opinion on this actually, because I'm seeing both things happening. Thing one is companies really grabbing the bull by the horns in terms of digital transformation, because they were on that path or they hadn't really got very far because of other priorities. Now they're totally prioritizing just going digital, in a big way. And even if they hadn't thought about it out of necessity now, many companies are just really jumping uh, into this space and just transforming themselves digitally. Not just the tools, but also the way the business operates and how it engages with its customers and its staff, uh, and so on. So there's a lot of what I would call really positive activities going on to accelerate digital transformation for business. Um, I also see uh, businesses being impacted by the economic recession, if you will, and seeing tech or the technology capability of their business as a cost. And so in the attempt to try and minimize costs to ensure that the business can survive the rough time, some companies actually just cutting out digital capabilities.
Mm.
And to me that is, well, it is tough. It's always tough to have to cut costs, and I've been involved with that, so I totally understand. But that is one of the most strategic capabilities that you really don't want to cut out.
Mm.
Yeah, unless you really, really, really have to.
But it's the thing. I mean, Mitchell. It's really with. I mean, really, it's offense and defense, right? A bunch of people are embracing it, throwing the flipping hammer down. Let's do this shit. Let's go cloud. Let's do this. Go, 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 and going for it. And there's a
Yeah.
whole bunch that are just on defense mode of like, uh, stuff this, and so I think there's just that tension of which kind of comes down just to the mindset of leadership, right? Like surely,
Mm.
I mean, these type of decisions is how you react to an environment which is happening to you or around you or in that mix. So you just kind of start to wonder about, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is through all this, that offense or defense or how you react to it, it's kind of exposing and making really transparent all the different types of leadership that exist and the challenges of, being leading with love and being more human and showing kindness and just really, I think it's highlighting great leaders and it's creating a lot of awesome kind of like tribal impactful glue to a lot of these organizations, and then a bunch of them as well. Like I've talked to people in the HR field and recruitment and yada yada yada, and they're saying there's going to be just this massive wave of exodus for all these people who no longer believe in the leadership or the company, or they had no care and feeling and so do you think this is almost going to be a new day for leadership globally, and they will be remembered for how they really acted during these times? Like how do you think leaders are going to be perceived in the future around this moment and what's kind of been going through from a leadership standpoint, running these businesses and making these hard calls?
I think this year, 2020, is actually a landmark year for leadership, or the transformation of leadership. I've always believed in leading with empathy, and compassion, and so there's nothing new there. And except that, through this crisis, I'm super delighted to see that that style of leadership is advancing and spreading and seems to be the new normal for leadership, which is really really great to see. Um, and I think the key thing for this new age of leadership is I just like to go back to what the business needs. Um, and then it's about how do we lead our people forward in that direction. Defense and offense. Uh, the offensive stance that many organizations take to really just grab the bull by the horns and just accelerate their digital transformation, that's obvious. I think with the defensive stance, the biggest risk is to try and call back everything you can and really cut out your digital capability in order to survive, and then find that you have survived the crisis and you emerge on the other side and the whole world is digital and you're not. Um, and so potentially that's going to be your next crisis, right?
Yeah.
And how long can it's not about how much cash you can conserve and how long you can last. It's about what shape you are in on the other side when the world comes back out of this recession, and it's all digital. And that takes audacity, that takes courage, and that takes a bit of extra risk taking, behavior for some of us business leaders, and that's scary. Um, but imagine it's even more scary for those who follow us. So it's very key now that we actually show the people we lead that we totally believe in the direction we're going in. It's unknown, but this is, and we have the audacity to act and with the willingness to take risks to do it. And let's just get get together behind this initiative and this direction and go forward, and then spend the time on working with your people to help them adapt to the new reality of their work, to help them mentally, and there's an element of mental health in here as well, because not everyone copes well under uncertainty, and also on top of that, under uncertainty while your salaries have been reduced or your partners have lost their jobs or something like that as well. So this time is quite an extreme combination of all of those certainties combined, for both the individuals themselves as well as the business organizations that they're part of. Um, so I think it is really important to spend more time with your people this time around.
Yeah, it's showing it through in so many ways because you can have PR teams and this and that, but the reality is when you've got constant face-to-face video chats all day, and like how are you motivating staff remotely, how are you being a virtual leader to scale out empathy, how are you all those things. I mean, it's been interesting to see how different leaders have tried to scale empathy and love and kindness through webcams and like remote staffing logistics. What advice would you give a business owner or a leader or organization that's been on defense, knows they need to go on offense, but's been too scared to because maybe they don't understand the world of tech, or they're fearful of that new world? What would you say to a fearful defensive leader that deep down wants to go on the offense, but is overcome by this crazy world of tech they don't understand?
I think businesses who are struggling to switch mode from defense to offense actually have the luxury of being surrounded by an ecosystem that supports the whole direction of digital transformation, from government to industry to other parts of the economy that surround the business, as well as the customer demands for that from the outside, on one hand. And I think that actually is a luxury, having those external support as well as pressure to kind of to switch to digital transformation offense mode. But even more important than that, there are so many other businesses around you who have similar challenges. Some are in that offense, the offense mode, and some are in the defense mode. All of whom are also very valuable. So I find that at times like this, peer businesses, even competitors, have a lot of value to really connect with, to engage with, to work out things that we can all do we can do together, we can do to support each other. So I think now more than ever, businesses or business leaders should not run their businesses as a silo, because there's a whole lot of interconnectivity out there that's actually very, very powerful to leverage to actually help move everyone forward.
Yeah, it's interesting now because it's just every single business owner is making tough decisions. Every single business owner is looking to the future. Every single business owner is trying to figure out, at these different levels, what does that mean for me and my business? What can and can't I do? What is the implications of all my different stuff? Strategically now we're going to obviously go from 4 to 3, 3 to a 2 for however long. Timing is unknown. Strategically, where do you think business owners and leaders should think about how they approach 4-3-2? Do you think they need a plan for each one? Do you think it already needs to be documented and communicated with team already? Do you think they need to be looking at, like, how would you strategically approach the leveling of how it relates to business? Because I think it's almost like these set guidelines of, as soon as this thing happens, boom, all these rules change, go. As soon as this happens, all these rules change, go. It's very clearly defined. So almost there needs to be, it feels like you need different game plans of, okay, this is my exact whole business model for this, and my exact whole, what advice would you give to strategically be approaching and prioritizing these different levels when it comes to, your business, or others that might be in business in the same lane?
So in my experience, in times like these, the planning needs to be driven a lot by external signals. So the government is doing a bunch of things to plan and establish parameters and constraints and protocols, policies, processes, all of those things around how businesses can operate. That's kind of one set of information that you need to take into your planning. But also industry groups are coming together, are doing things and looking at how the industry is, each of these industries is being transformed. And by participating and taking part in these conversations that bring industry together, it's also going to give you another set of information, another set of insight in terms of where our industry is going and how are we as an industry going to cope with this thing, and then therefore that's how do I align my business, and then of course there's no there's no planning on how you work with customers without involving customers, right? So it's really important. The third kind of set of data or information that you need is actually going to come from your customers. You know, how's their world changing? How are they dealing with the new kind of realities that they and their customers are having to face? And that then also gives you the insights you need to then bring back into the business. And then you can kind of look at the fourth dimension, which is internal to our business, or how we're going to change, how we're going to shift. What can we do right now in the short to medium term to maintain the flow of business as best we can? And in the meantime, what in parallel do we do to renovate or to completely, change the model or to do something new and different altogether? So I think all of those four sets of influences and data and signals are really important for leaders to work with. You can't really just work from inside out at times like these.
Yeah, it's the lateral thinking thing from every different part of everyone's business got affected. Every single piece, logistics, supply chain, tech, marketing, sales, staffing, HR, absolutely every piece. And so I've been thinking about the mental baggage of how leaders are having to sort of navigate through that. And so kind of leading into kind of almost this next little piece when you think about it is, you're talking about these four different pieces they need to be thinking about. What does that new future look like? How do you sort of, reframe those future opportunities? Now, when you see New Zealand and you look at the opportunity of potentially, we're doing very well in comparison to a whole lot of other countries. We've got a pretty clear, a bit of a game plan of what it can look like and what success can be. Now, when you look at the ecosystem, not from a New Zealand perspective, but to the world, where do you think, if you were to reframe the future of New Zealand technology, obviously we talked about for a while, I think tech was the second biggest export and it's on its way to be the number one within, I think it was 18 months ago. And obviously probably after this, without tourism or trade and exports, I'm imagining tech will probably be number one by Christmas, if not now, because there's no other money circulating anywhere. But in this new world, how would you envision and reframe what the future of NZ tech could be going to the world?
I think one thing is absolutely clear, right? And that is the world will now be only more and more digital or digitally enabled and digitally connected going forward. So this is just a very key part of the new reality for all industries, really. And so from a non-tech industry perspective, looking at all of the other industries out there, there's a real opportunity through this crisis to kind of reset a whole bunch of things, but more importantly, to embrace technology, innovation, to also look more closely at intellectual property and intangible assets that you can draw out and grow and develop as part of a business or as part of the industry that is much, much more scalable than the traditionally produced commodities and much more easily exportable to the rest of the world. I think all industries have that same opportunity with this current crisis, going forward, looking forward, and adapting themselves forward. For the tech industry itself, there's a whole range of a very diverse range of opportunities in front of us, both with new technologies emerging all the time and are now kind of driven by the latest crisis to provide a whole bunch of capabilities that we didn't have before with technology. So there's a whole bunch of emerging technology accelerating forward. But also, every other industry whom we serve are now needing us more than ever. Our role as an enabler and also as a facilitator of new innovation for these other industries has become much more critical. I think even not just looking at an industry level, but even looking at an individual business level, you should be able to see how much more important you are now as a tech capability, tech solution, and an enabler for your customers. And there's also an opportunity to look at new industries where you've never had customers as well, because of some of the technology innovation that you have could be very applicable to other industries. I've seen some businesses taking their innovation for healthcare, and looking at opportunities to apply that in retail, in very, very different industries. Um, so I think really it's about the awareness that we are now a very, very critical piece um, for the future of business and the future of New Zealand. And that if we really develop a whole lot of innovation and build IP and intangible assets on top of businesses, on top of industries, then ultimately, I don't think the tech sector really is about being the number one export. Um, uh, we should really be about New Zealand being the number one export across the
What
board.
What do you mean by that?
Um, so we have the opportunity to innovate and bring out new solutions across a whole range of industry sectors. So, excuse me, the opportunity for the tech sector isn't about growing our sales and exporting more of our sales, but about working with businesses in other industry to look at how tech can enable them to accelerate growth and export. That's what I mean. Because we are such a key enabler now across the entire economy and society, um, that we need to think differently about ourselves,
Mm.
about our role in the New Zealand landscape, as well as if we, I'll take one example, very, very simple example. We produce a lot of food to feed the world, and that's really important. And we're certainly making an impact, making a difference to the world. But if we produce a whole lot of agri-tech and export that, and that technology know-how uh, empower and enable the world to feed itself, well, then we are now talking about exponential impact
Mm.
from out of New Zealand. You know, much much more than just the commodities that we export, right?
Yeah, well, then it becomes about the weightless value of something which can scale globally through it. So it's almost using tech to amplify the actual opportunity commercially for a nation, right? It changes the
Yes.
it changes the thinking, and even just when you go back to the idea about IP, and so it's something I've been thinking about a little bit, and especially over the last week, we caught up with Ian Taylor last week, and he was saying his team not letting anyone go. Everyone's in the mix to at least Christmas doing damage. And he said, look, now's the time where I want you to build all the crazy shit that we haven't had chance to do before, that we've been too busy doing the PGA and
Mm.
the yada 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 yada. But he had this kind of, you could tell that he was thinking, well, all of this greatness that we get created through this forced time to create is actually going to be worth 10x, 100x, as long as we can obviously find the need of it for the other side. And obviously, when people are involved in industry and they're very passionate about something, and then they have been wanting to do this thing for all the time, the amount of pure energy they'll put into something to make it good, and to solve a problem that they know is in the market, whatever, there's going to be huge upside for those businesses as well. They don't just think about, how do we potentially reset for a new world of commerce? Actually, how do we look at what ideas we could create for the problems that we know that we have that others actually might have as well, and actually use it as a time potentially to go from a service-based business to potentially a product-based business. And even just that mind shift alone is such a strong and hugely powerful thing if you can get into the right ecosystem with the right thinking to the right vertical with the right product for the right problem that people have in the market. So yeah, it's interesting here just hearing you saying those words again, because most people are thinking about their business and how they survive instead of actually, do we have the capability to help more than just ourselves? And I think that's also takes a bit of self-awareness and EQ and a bit more chess thinking from some leaders, right?
Uh, yeah, totally. I spend far more time thinking about how tech can grow other business and industries rather than itself, because that's where the opportunity for tech to make the real impact, right? If you look at every industry sector across New Zealand, every single business has great ideas, has problems and challenges and great ideas on how to solve problems. So if we couple that together with technology and innovation experts, imagine what we can create, and also how much more lightweight and exportable, the outcomes can be, on top of being able to do what we've already been doing for a long time and very, very good at. So I personally do not advocate that New Zealand does less of anything. Why? Because with tech, we can do more of everything, and we can do it smarter and lighter and more exportable and more scalable. Um, and so it's about just applying tech more smartly and harness the IP that already exists across all industries, to really then apply that multiplier to
Yep.
New Zealand's export, and capabilities.
Yeah, it's so right. So how do you think this how do you think Corona plays out for New Zealand and what this means for business? Like how do you think this plays out over the next 6 months commercially?
Um, I have to answer to that. My first answer is that it's really, really good as a stimulus for new conversations, conversations we haven't had before, we haven't heard before, and maybe some of us haven't had time to think about and engage in before. So that, I think, from a positive perspective, it's a really good time for new conversations, and it's really great to see lots of new conversations happening. And long may that continue. And these conversations lead to new ideas and innovations and adaptations and everything else. So they are a very, very good part of that process that we're now engaging with. The other one is a more personal view, I think. I love reading about predictions of the future. Um, and it's very easy for me to want to join those conversations. But personally, I actually prefer to spend more time and pay more attention to people in conversations that are actually actively working to shape the new future. So there's a lot of people and organizations out there who are looking at very, very real opportunities or real changes that they are working on, where they look at certain challenges in society or in business or in industry, and they're looking at new solutions, and they actually maybe they've lost their job, so now they're going to start a new business to try and address that, or not, but still, taking on, doing new things to actually shape the new future. I think those are the people who are really going to make whatever the new future comes through, while other people will actually just look at data and try and just to predict what the future might be. And I think we can tune into those conversations, but we also have the opportunity. Every single one of us has the opportunity to actually join the people who are actually who are actively shaping the future for ourselves.
What gets you most excited about the future of New Zealand?
The most exciting thing about the future of New Zealand is that it's not made yet. So that's the real opportunity for me to,
Blank
and many
canvas.
others to, yes, we've just been given a brand new blank canvas, and that is the most exciting. It's we cannot predict it, but we totally can shape it. We can paint the picture that we want.
If you were to shape it right now with the little the fancy little magic wand, what would you shape for New Zealand?
I think personally, um, I feel that every single New Zealander, every single Kiwi, has huge potential um, to make a difference to New Zealand as well as the world. So I think the most important thing for me is to make sure that this opportunity, which has created a blank canvas, for all of us, that we can all participate, in shaping this new future, and none of us is going to miss out because of our demographics or financial situations or our upbringing or our background. So being able to have all 5 million of us having the opportunity and the ability to actively engage ourselves and shape our own future and the future of New Zealand. That's really, really important. I know there's so many great Kiwis that I look up to, but we still make up just a very small part of the New Zealand population. Imagine if, there are 5 million world-class New Zealanders coming out and engaging across the country and with the rest of the world.
Yeah, that type of stuff gets you excited because I think the blank canvas is interesting. It's cool too when you think about for as unfortunate of a reason to get in here the reality of the entire world and business going into like an online digital first based not only economy but entire like bricks and the bricks and foundations of everything that which we have created now are in this space. It's absolutely mega. Beatrice Pham, much respect. Beatrice is in the show. Round of applause for Beatrice. Ripping. She's such a good chick. Bro, love your work, man.
She's
Always
wonderful.
always love hanging out and just, I was just thinking, I was like, when was the last time I actually saw you? And I think it was literally at the Asia Society thing in San Fran. It wasn't even that long ago as well, which was pretty. It was
I know.
amazing, absolutely
That was
amazing.
December, right? In San Francisco.
Yeah, wasn't too far
Yes.
away. Love your work, brother. Thanks so much for your time. I know you're
Thank you.
tapped and you got a million things bubbling away, but it's always good. You've always got a very good, like just grounding perspective on things, which is very refreshing at times like this. You're a good human, Mitchell. Good shit, my friend.
Thank you, you too, and appreciate the chance to have this chat. Hey, let's stay connected.
My man. I'll see you soon, brother. Later, Mitch.
See you.
See you, bro. Such a G. Just soulful depth and intellect. Flipping weapon. For those who don't know, Mitchell Pham, he's do a bit of digging on the dude. He's done some shit, and it is awesome. Amazing human. Good times. Good kick off, actually. Good intellectual way to start thinking about just, I don't know, leadership a bit differently, businesses of how they approach it, offense versus defense. That's become a very recurring theme across a bunch of it. And so good as gold. We will see you at the next one, team. Hope the weekend was well. Everyone's slowly starting to get excited to come out of 4 into the 3, get into that KFC drive through. Game on, team. See you soon.